Looking at Wordle again, if we type in another word, we can see the tiles flip over one by one. So let's also update the app to have that similar effect. So to have this animation run when the user actually presses enter, let's go to the controller, and I'm going to create a new variable of type bool, and this will be named checked line. We'll set this as false, and then down here in the check word method we will set check line equal to true, and this notify listeners is actually in the wrong spot. It should be at the end of the method here. Okay, now back to the tile. Let's just listen to check line. So here, before we run the animation controller forward, we can say if notifier, so to access the controller, dot check line is true, and then let's wrap all of this in this if statement here. Then all of this will run. Okay, let's do a hot restart. And now press enter. Okay, cool. So everything is flipping over when we want it to. Let's come up to the animation controller, which kickstarts this animation by running dot forward. Here we can use the future class to create a delay. So each tile will run after an even greater delay. So I'll write future, and now we can use the delayed method, and then I will put in a delay of say 300 milliseconds, and now this will call a method at the completion of this delay. So we can cut this here, animation controller dot forward, paste it in here. Now at this point all the tiles will run after a 300 millisecond delay, so we need a way to progressively increase this for each tile. One way we can do that is by using this index that's passed in to the widget. So we know the index is 0, 1, 2, 3 running up to 29. So if we times the index by this amount, this will work well for the first row, 0, 300, 600, 900, 1200, but then in the next row the delay will continue, so we'll start at 1500 milliseconds for the first tile. So we want to reset this back. So we can create a variable and I'll write delay in here. Now to make sure widget index is being reset, I'll write minus, and we want to minus the current row, and we can access the current row with the notifier from consumer here. Notifier dot current row times 5. Now by the time we read current row here, it would have already been incremented by 1, so we just need to undo that. So in the controller that increments current row by 1, so to make sure this works we'll just go -1 here. Okay, cool, so let's test that. Do a hot restart. Okay, cool, so that looks pretty good. Now let's do another word, and we have a small problem, and the reason for that is it's running before we have pressed enter, so we need to reset check line back to false after we've run the animation, and then when it gets reset back to true it'll run in one go. So we can just access the controller again by using notifier, go check line, and we'll set that equal to false. So now to recap, here we're creating a small delay that will always run from 0 to 4. Then we're using a future to create a delay of 300 seconds, and for each tile it will increase by the delay amount here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this number here will be 0, 300, 600, 900, 1200. Now after the staggered delay, then this method will be called, which will run our controller, and we will also set the check line back to false. Cool, so shark is printing out. Okay, cool. So that animation, the flip animation's looking pretty good, and it's working for every row. Okay, one final thing is when we type in a word, and the tiles flip over, the colors immediately change, but the color should change after the tile has flipped over to the new side. So let's fix that. We can come down here, and here we have a flip variable of type double, and when the animation controller has run more than 50%, then flip gets a value of pi, so it's no longer 0. So we can use that as a condition. So down here in the background color, we can write flip greater than 0, question mark. So using the ternary operator, we can say if flip has a value, so it's not 0, then let's return the background color. But if the animation has not yet run at 50%, so flip will equal 0. So therefore this will be false, so we'll return a transparent color. Now let's slow this animation right down. I'll change this to 3000, so 3 seconds. And now let's check this out. Okay, now let's see. Cool. So we can see that the colors are changing after it's flipped around. Now also, the border is disappearing immediately. We want the border to disappear after this tile has a color. So we'll apply the same logic down here. So here we have the border color. I'll write flip greater than 0, question mark. So if flip is greater than 0, so this means that it's flipped over, then colors.transparent should return. However, if this is false, then we'll have the border color. Now let's check that out. Okay, so that's not working. So if we look up here, we've got the border color set as transparent. So let's remove these lines of code that set border color as transparent. And let's run that one more time. Okay, awesome. So that is looking good. Now let's also change this to the light theme. And if we run this again, we see the text is white, so we need to change that back to black. So here on the text, I'll do a condition. If flip is greater than 0, i.e. the animation is more than halfway through, we'll return that text. Otherwise, we'll just return the default text, which is a default color of black. So let's see how that looks. Okay, awesome. So the font color is changing. So I've reset the duration at 500 to a hot restart. Now let's compare this against Wordle. Here it flips over. And now let's type in the same word. Okay, cool. So I think we're fairly close with the animation there of flipping over. In the next video, we'll set up a bounce animation each time a letter is updated in the grid tile.